For Reaper Metal Productions, I am Adam of Unbaptized Records, making a brand new video for you today. And today was part one, but it's now part two of my little mini series going through my horror movies. My part one actually had the audio cut out, so I had to re-record it, which is fine. So this is technically the movies that would have been in the first video, but it got cut out. So we're going to do it again, and I have about maybe 4 or 5 videos altogether going through my horror movies because, as I thought, I know a lot of people who tend to be in the metal community also have a few other things in common. Usually it's something like early morning cartoons from the 80s and 90s. It could be things like wrestling, video games. But this time I figured horror is probably the second biggest thing in common most people have. So if you like metal music, you also probably like horror movies. So I figured, even though it's in the middle of, well, it was in the middle of February when I'm recording this, but basically the middle of the winter, it'd still be cool to go through my horror movies because really, if you're a big enough fan, it doesn't really matter what time of the season you watch this stuff. I think the true fans will watch it whenever, even though Halloween obviously is the perfect spooky season, but really this can be enjoyed at any point, especially this pile of movies here. These are going to be some of the more goofy horror movies. Anyone who knows me knows that I mostly like comedies, so the few horror movies I do like tend to be more in the campy and horror comedy style. So that's what I'm going to go through today. And the first is a double feature. These are the movies Terror Vision and The Video Dead. Of these two, Terror Vision is definitely my favorite. That's the reason I bought this. Really, the similarities that bring these two movies together is that some sort of monstrous entity comes out of the TV to scare the crap out of a family. In this case, this is, again, the one that got me into just really goofy horror movies in general. I would say of all the movies I have, that one's probably number one. So it's a really campy 80s horror comedy with a lot of really interesting references. I just really enjoy it because I like the way that the monster is represented in this movie. I think it's really creative. And I like the fact that, and I'm not really spoiling much because it happens in the first 10 minutes or so, but the creature is an alien that will be transmitted through a TV. The alien was originally a pet. Basically, once the pet gets a little bit of blood in its mouth, it goes crazy, it can't be saved, and it gets just transmuted into outer space through basically getting demolecularized or whatever, and it just becomes this little ray and gets shot to space. The problem was, this is in the early, or I guess late 80s, when people wanted to have their TVs with all the hookups, and one guy gets like a bootleg satellite that's literally just like a giant satellite sitting in the back of his house, sort of before they had the big dishes, and he accidentally gets the monster in his TV, and chaos ensues from there. So it's really an interesting movie. When I first saw it, I couldn't even believe it. It was just so wacky for me, at least for me. I don't normally watch these kind of movies, so when I did see this, it was just so over the top. Like, all the characters are super 80s, just really look ridiculous. It just threw me off at first, and I thought it was hilarious. So, like, the grandpa is like a either Vietnam or World War II survivor vet, and he's crazy and lives in this bunker and has a whole bunch of weapons, and like he has these lizards that he incubates and eats their tails because they regrow. So he's like an infinite food supply. And then the daughter of the parents in this movie, she's just all dressed up and looks like a just crazy 80s go-go dancer type character. And her boyfriend, his name is pretty funny. I'm not going to spoil it. But his nickname is pretty interesting. And then he's supposed to be a metalhead. He's wearing like a wasp shirt or something and a whole bunch of like denim and leather and stuff. And the parents are swingers, and that's how the whole thing gets started. So it's a pretty interesting movie. I highly recommend it. And then the other one, The Video Dead, I don't really care for that much. It just happened to have come with this, and I watched it. Basically, it's just about zombies that live in a TV, and they get trapped in there, and someone lets them loose by accident, and then the family that inherits the TV has to figure out how to keep them in, and you can kind of figure out how it goes from there. So not really that interesting, but Terror Vision is great. It's up there for me as one of the ones I watch as much as I can because it's just so goofy, and I can't really do it justice by trying to explain it, especially without, not really spoilers. I mean, it's not really a spoiler type movie, but without giving away too much of the plot. And I use plot pretty loosely there. Next is a movie I also came across pretty randomly, and it definitely falls in the horror comedy grouping, I guess, and this is called Motel Hell. So this kind of reminds me of like a Texas Chainsaw knockoff. You got the guy with like a pig head, like looks like this could be an intro for like a Mortician song or something. But it's really super goofy. It's just about this family that has a farm, and it's pretty nefarious as you come to find out. And it's just very goofy. I don't really know how to describe it other than just being a really weird, goofy movie, um, where the family has a really interesting thing that they grow in the ground. That's all I'll say. And it's sort of like a take on, I guess, maybe anti-factory farming or something. I don't really know. But the only thing I do know is John Ratzenberger's in it. And I know because he's, I think, also from Connecticut, but he was in Cheers. He was the mailman in Cheers, which I never watched that show. But growing up in the 90s, I was one of those people who did see the Toy Story movies, and he was the pig from Toy Story. So that's how I knew him. But of course, he's just in a lot. I mean, he's also, speaking of horror movies, I don't have the box, I don't think, but he was in the second House movie. So that was interesting. I actually kind of enjoyed that movie. He has a really funny character in that too. So, but yeah, it's just a really just kind of goofy movie. Pretty much like Texas Chainsaw Massacre sort of meets, I don't even know what else. Just can't be horror movies from the 80s, you know. Just kind of have to watch it to get it without me spoiling it. I just don't want to give away too much of what happens in the movie, but you can kind of imagine basically hinting at like people go missing near a farm, and then all of a sudden, you know, there's like, you know, no, people are missing and what's going on. Well, you kind of got to watch the movie. I don't really want to explain it, but I'm not doing a great job at that anyway. So next we have a movie that I discovered because of the Angry Video Game Nerd. And the only actor in this movie I do recognize is the doctor from Reanimator, and not the Herbert West doctor played by Jeff Combs, the older one who gets decapitated. So I don't know if you recognize him here at all, but it's like the only other movie he's in, and I feel like it's pretty much the same character. But this is a movie called The Brain, and I'm very grateful that this movie was remade because it was only ever put out on VHS, and it was pretty expensive, and it's not that great of a movie. I'm not going to go out of my way to buy like an $80 VHS. So I'm glad they put this out. Basically, this is just a mind control movie. It's kind of, I guess, a lot of these horror movies, especially from the 70s and 80s, even if they're super campy, they always try to have a little bit of a message. And this one is just like not paying too much attention to TV and talk shows. And you can't necessarily trust everything you see on TV. That's kind of the gist of it. But basically, this brain character is being incubated in the lab, and it's being broadcast on TV. And when people see it, they start to go crazy. And a girl like takes her whole life at the beginning, and then a couple of teenagers try to figure out what's going on. And that's when they discover the brain. They discover this doctor because I think he's like a psychiatrist or something. And parents send their kids to him if they have issues. But then the TV show that he's on, like an Oprah type show, starts driving the kids insane. So that's all I can really say about that movie. And the brain effect at the end, where they actually show the physical character, is just so goofy and over the top. But that's kind of the way I like some of my movies. So if you're here for the super gory and creepy, disturbing movies, you're probably not going to find it in my collection, but that's okay. And speaking of goofy movies, this is probably the goofiest two movies you'll ever see. But these are the Troll movies, which I own on Blu-ray and DVD. So I think Troll 2 kind of speaks for itself. I would assume most people know it. It's like one of the best, worst movies you'll ever see. But the first Troll movie is actually pretty interesting too, because it has some notable actors in it. So Julia Louis-Dreyfus from Seinfeld's in it, and Sonny Bono, who was married to Cher at one point and did the Sonny and Cher show, which I'm way too young to know about, but I do kind of know about it. So they're in this movie. And another actor, Michael Moriarty, who's in like two other movies, one of which I have in this pile here, I'll show you later. The other one's called The Stuff, which I have on DVD, but I don't have the box on me. He's like one of the only other characters kind of note. And he's in a few of these movies of the era, and he plays a character named Harry Potter. So this is before the movies or the show. Sorry, the book. So maybe J.K. Rowling was watching the first Troll movie and thought Harry Potter was a good name. I highly doubt it, but I'm just really glad that I own these on both DVD and Blu-ray, and I definitely didn't pay too much for it because they're not worth owning for that much. So, but I'm kind of glad I have both movies, and I know they eventually made like a third one too, but I think this is enough. And then last but not least, very similar, movie to what I just showed you. I believe they actually made 4 of these, and these are just super goofy movies. The Ghoulies. So you can kind of tell by my language that a lot of these movies have the same vibe to them. Just not your super scary movies, super campy, just a lot of fun horror comedies. I really enjoy this kind of movie, and this one really isn't much different than just a lot of the odd little movies you'll find out there, like sort of like a low budget Gremlins or Critters. If you're familiar with those, I have those movies as well, the 4 Critters movies. So just one of those like odd type of movies that just comes out. And I bet you people in the 80s and 90s, when they actually had video stores, they would go out and they would see the cover and just be like, what the hell is this? I need to watch it. So that's the kind of movie this is. If you're a fan, if you're not, that's fine too. I have a few more movies that are a little bit more serious, but not that much more serious. So let me know what you thought of these, and I'll see you in the next video.